We talked about some of this stuff briefly before, but just to make sure everybody's 100% clear, when you paint, think about what you're doing and move carefully. You're going to have different supplies on your table. These acrylic paints don't come out of your clothing. Second thing about painting is you don't get paint where it does not belong. So it belongs in the cups that it starts in. Paint belongs on your paintbrush, obviously. It belongs on your letter. It'll end up in your water cup, but it doesn't belong on your body or your friend or the table or your book or anything like that. If that happens as an accident, you just clean up after yourself. So don't pretend like it wasn't you. Don't try to hide it. Just clean it up. If it happens on purpose, you just won't paint in here. So you can color your letter with markers or colored pencils. To set up for painting, we went over this, but I still have to remind people, always have a newspaper to cover your table. So you're going to need your letter. Obviously, you're going to need to pick out some paintbrushes. Each table gets a tray of these paints. So if somebody at your table has already grabbed a tray of paints, don't go grab another one. Each person gets their own mixing paper. So you don't have to share this with someone else, but you get one per class. So you don't mix a puddle on here and then throw it out and get another, and mix and throw it out, and mix and throw it out. You can choose to wear an apron. They're in the bin over by the paint to protect your clothing. We talked about this before, but everybody thinks that I don't have to. You need to start by drawing lines. So if I'm going to do wings here, I have to draw lines with pencil first. Otherwise, it's not going to magically happen right out of paint. Then we need to talk about how you get the paint out of your cups. So they come in these wonderful little like ketchup cups. And a lot of people think that they can like dump it. Please don't. Use your brush and scoop. I should start with a color I'm actually going to use. So for my wings, instead of trying to dump this white paint out, put your brush in there and just scoop it. You don't need to put your brush in so far that you get paint on the metal part. You don't paint with the metal part, it's useless. So think of your brush like a teeny tiny broom to sweep the floor. You don't use this part, you don't use the handle to sweep the floor, it doesn't do anything. So we're going to stick to the basics. So now that I have my scoop of white paint here, I can mess up this white paint all I want. I can make a disaster, a rainbow inside of it. This cup should stay clean because other people have to use it. And so I would recommend that you start by scooping out all the colors you need on your mixing paper so you don't have to worry about when you're in a hurry and you didn't wash your brush and sticking it in a paint color where it doesn't belong. So since I forgot my cup of water, I'm going to scoop with a different brush so I know that I have some clean blue here. So now I have stuff on here. You don't need that much paint. Notice that was one scoop. Some people think they need enough paint to paint the whole classroom. You don't. Please don't waste the paint like that. Again, if I see you doing that, you just won't use paint in here. When you go to mix, start with whatever color you consider to be the lightest. So technically the red, yellow, and blue are equal. But the yellow is going to be a weaker paint color. It's going to be taken over more easily by other paints. So between blue and white, white is definitely going to be the lightest. And I'm going to want to keep some of my white just in case. So I'm going to mix in a new spot with a little bit of my color that I'm adding. So you can always add more blue. You just can't take any back out. We went over that in our last warm-up. So please don't start with too much, or you're going to have to add a gallon of white to try to counteract all the blue. So if I want this pretty light blue, I can go ahead and use that now that it's mixed evenly on my letter. When you apply paint, paint it on, again, think of it like a tiny broom. So you don't like glop with a broom, that doesn't do anything. Instead, you want to use like a stroke like you would with a broom, back and forth. Once you have like nice even coverage, notice there's no puddles. You don't have to glop it. Some of you guys are really gloppy painters and it's a waste of paint. It's really a misuse of paint that'll again make me take the paint away from you and have you work with markers or colored pencils. Then there's some fancy things that you can definitely do. So when you have a nice sharp edge of your paint there, That's called a hard edge, and that just means you have a really firm line. If you're struggling to achieve that edge, I'll show you here. If you have the right amount of paint on your brush, it'll make a hard edge. So most people prefer that solid, clean line just because that's how you probably imagine stuff. But if you have something like this, that's called a soft edge. So if you can see from the way the lighting is, if it's kind of fuzzy, that's called a soft edge. If you do that on purpose, it can look really good. Right now it's not on purpose. Right now I'm just trying to get this filled in with blue so I can go back and do some fancy paint techniques. So I could do a soft edge with my white to kind of like shade this feather of my wing here and sort of blend it out. So if your paints are still damp and you don't have very much paint on your brush and you sort of fuzz it out like that, you can get a blended edge, or you can get them to blend together like an ombre effect if that's what you're going for. If you let them dry, you have to work at it just a little bit more to get that sort of fancy little effect. So that is your soft edge. So those are your fancy paint techniques that I would like to see ideally in your work. So you can see on my shoe, I did some soft edges to blend together some black and some white so it looks like it's shaded. You can definitely do that, or you can have hard edges on designs so they look really solid and finished like a coloring book. Just make sure that at the end you clean up after yourself. So both of these paintbrushes don't get put away like this, they get washed in the sink. And your mixing palette goes in the garbage. Please notice how contained my puddles of paints are. If you mix all over the paper and you get one per class, well then I hope you're using one paint color per class, because otherwise it's going to be difficult. We talked this over in the past. Today you got to see it in action. Fair warning, I don't want to take away painting privileges, but I have in the past and I will again.